Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Be Her with Shalon. And we are continuing on our Solo Mom series this season. And today we have Amy Dawns here to join us. And she's going to tell us a little bit about her journey and what she does and everything. So thanks for being here, Amy.
Thanks for having me, Dawn.
I'm excited to hear about your story and everything that you're doing and whatnot now. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself first?
Well, I've been a solo mom for, most of my son's life. He just turned 18. He's graduating this year, so
Oh, exciting.
that's incredible. Yeah, I think we have a child the same age, don't we?
Yeah, my youngest daughter is graduating this year, so
Yes. Yeah, so we're both going through it.
yes,
Yeah,
we're
for
gonna
sure.
be like empty nesters, I guess, kind of.
Yeah, yeah, I will be once he moves out, but I think he's going to stay with me for a little bit. And I've also been a solo entrepreneur that entire time and before that. So I have a background in energy medicine. I don't do that a lot anymore. I'm an artist and author and really just currently focusing on my speaking career, as well as I branched out into the financial industry and became a licensed financial broker recently. So yeah, I've worn many hats and I keep expanding and keep learning and it's a lot of fun.
Isn't that kind of how we are as solo moms? We kind of like just bring all of our passions together and make them work for us in order to like make life happen for like us and our kids, kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I've never been very conventional and think that we have to fit like all of our passions and everything into a box. I think it's just under like the umbrella of us and our authenticity. And yeah, I mean, the financial industry is something I never ever saw myself in, but I joke around because I'm like, if you would have asked me 20 years ago if I saw myself doing anything in the last, 20 years, I would have probably been shocked or laughed at you. So,
hmm
yeah.
No, I feel that like because it's very different from your normal like energy work and artist and like your artwork is beautiful. I've seen it. It's amazing. Um and so you're getting into speaking events as well. That's exciting.
Yeah, I've had that's a childhood passion. I don't know how else to describe it except I just know I was born to be on stage. I re-found myself on stage last year and it's just like a second home. I just feel so natural and effortless up there. So I know that life's been calling me in that direction. And now, with my son graduating, I have a lot more freedom to travel and to get booked on stages that I probably typically wouldn't have opened myself up to before. So I'm really looking forward to growing that.
Mhm. And what do you tend to share about with your speaking?
My signature speech is called Born Worthy, and it really is about that we're born worthy. It's inherent in us. It's not something that we need to earn or prove like most of us have been taught, uh, including me. It's funny. I think it's funny that we often teach or explore the things that we've had the most growth in our lives, and worthiness is just one of those themes for me. So I take little stories from my life and I just really integrate them in a way that shows people that our worthiness isn't built around outcomes or
Mhm.
our past decisions or any of our failures or mistakes, that really we just have this infinite pool of possibility and potential available to us in any moment, and we are a soul having a human experience, and that there's this beautiful thing called grace that we just get to decide. We get to choose and co-create our lives the way we want to, and that all of our heart's desires were God-given and a gift for us to just reveal to us and experience throughout our lives.
Absolutely. I love that. So do you want to kind of tell us a little bit about like your worthiness journey then in regards to like being a solo mom and your son and everything?
Yeah, I love that question. It's a great question. Thank you.
Mhm.
I think for me, being a mom has been the most worthy journey of them all. I always say that my son has been the biggest blessing, and I know I'm biased because I'm his mother, and I know every mom says that, but truthfully, he has just been a stable grounding anchor in my life. He is such an incredible human being, and I feel so blessed. He's just been the light of my world. And so to know that I didn't have to do anything to have him or him be the son that he is. Although, I've done the inner work the last 20 years and everything like that, but prior, like if you were to look on paper my past before that, the things I dealt with a lot were shame around my body image, around who I was. I just had no sense of being enough. I always had this like deep core wound of like I wasn't enough and I wasn't valuable and I wasn't worthy. And I think that came from a lot of abandonment wounds as a child, which a lot of us have. And because of that, I stayed small and I shrunk in a lot of ways, and I gave my power away to abusive relationships, and I thought love in some form was abuse. Now, that sounds ridiculous saying out loud, but on a very subconscious level, I really learned that growing up as a kid. And so, right before my son was born, I actually experienced all of my sexual trauma from my childhood come to the surface during my birthing experience with him, which was wild. And he's really my hero because it was that experience that set me off in this spiritual awakening, if you want to call it, path.
Mhm.
And yeah, I started to discover and learn so much about me, that our belief systems and our physicality and our emotions and our spirituality, like they're all interconnected. Like nothing is separate. And yet we all have this illusion that everything like is a separate piece when it's really coming back to wholeness.
hmm hmm And I love how you said like you didn't need to be worthy of just having your son, and the whole concept of like as moms we feel like yeah, like we're never doing enough. Like it's never enough, and like no matter what it'll never be enough, right? And we just want to give to our kids so much all the time as well, and that I think tends to lead to us like self-sacrificing ourselves in a lot of ways as well.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think there's been times like where I've caught myself. I am by no means a perfect mom. I think what I got to have as a gift, and because of my journey, I've had a very transparent relationship with my son. So anytime I recognize like a pattern come up and I've taken time to reflect, like I'll have that conversation with him. And I think that's such a missing piece. Like I didn't have that growing up as a kid, and not to, throw my parents under the bus. They did the best that they knew with what they knew, and I wouldn't be who I am without them. However, I'm so grateful that I was sent on this path, but I still have moments where I feel like, I haven't given him the world, especially when it comes to money. Like the last belief that I ever wanted to impose on him was that you have to struggle financially with life. And
hmm
he's seen me at my worst in that, but he's also seen me at my highest peak in that. So
hmm Yeah.
yeah.
No, and I feel like as solo moms that we tend to be, I think, a little bit more open with our kids and share with them a little bit more than we would if we had an actual partner as well, because um, you know, there is only us. If that makes sense, right? There is nobody else. There is no other sounding board and stuff. And I think part of our journey as well is like having that communication with our kids so that they know that it's safe to communicate about these things as well, because we maybe didn't have that communication with our parents, right, growing up, like you'd said.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I'll be maybe vulnerable here for a second, but last weekend I had a little bit of a meltdown, and it happened in front of him, and it's not the first time he's seen me like that, but I really, even while I'm going through that, I make a conscious effort to say like I'm not projecting anything on you. But if he asks me, like I will be absolutely honest about how I'm feeling in my
Mhm,
human moment. And I think that's something, as solo moms and solo entrepreneurs, sometimes, especially in our line of work and what we've done in our lives, we think that it's not okay to have those moments and we should know better and we should be healed through this by now. But it's just our human experience. And when we can embrace it and not apologize for our feelings, in fact, one of the root causes, I think, of my unworthiness is I never felt safe to feel my emotions growing up as a kid, which I'm sure a lot of your listeners can resonate. And
mhm,
so learning how to feel my feelings has been my growth for me.
And that it's safe to do so, and being like open with your children about the fact that like we are still human, right?
Yeah.
We still have these feelings, and that we, carrying everything all the time can get to be a little bit much as well, right? And so when we can be vulnerable with our children so that they understand that it's okay to express their emotions and process through them as well is very, very important, so that we're kind of like breaking that cycle of, as opposed to just being like closed off and closed down and not sharing what's actually truly going on within ourselves, right? Because
Yeah.
I know as a mom, especially when like my kids were younger, like I feel like the weight of everything kind of was taken out on them at times sometimes, right? And it was like, well, wait a minute, this actually has nothing to do with them. It doesn't. It's just that you're frustrated and overwhelmed right now and you're feeling too much, right? And so when we can actually take a step back and explain to them what's going on with us on the inside, then I think, it's very good for them to also learn how to express themselves too, and that it's safe to do so, for sure.
Yeah, I think it's important.
I find it very interesting that you said like that all the trauma came up when you were in like labor with your son. Like I
Yeah.
never actually thought about that, how your child like, or being giving birth to your child would bring up like that past trauma and all of that kind of stuff.
Well, it was just a circumstance. I don't know how much you want me to disclose of that.
Whatever you're comfortable with, just
Yeah,
whatever.
I'm comfortable with it all. I think I'm
Mhm.
always just very tender around the subject because
And that's
I
fair.
don't know who listens, but I don't ever want to like paint this picture that somebody else could take on as their own who's never had a baby before, because I know we all
Right.
have different experiences,
Absolutely.
but it was meant to happen or it wouldn't have happened, and it was a saving grace even in the moment it didn't feel that way. And I think that's a really important message for me to share before I tell you a little bit about what happened. But basically, I was induced because I was late,
Mhm.
and at this time, like I didn't have a conscious awareness of everything that I know now. And so I just agreed to everything. I didn't have a midwife or
Yeah.
anything like that. If I were to do it all over again, I would definitely do it differently.
Mhm.
However, so my water broke, and then I went to the hospital and they ended up sending me home. And then I went home and I started having contractions right away as soon as they sent me home. So we went back to the hospital, and I'll just give you little bits and pieces. But basically,
Yeah.
this was 18 years ago. So the hospital here was overbooked in the induction ward. There was only a certain amount of people that were supposed to be there. So we were all separated just by those curtains, laying in these beds. And my son's heart rate was dropping from the induction. So he was not responding to it well. So I was monitored the whole time. So I wasn't allowed to get up and walk around like normal pregnant women would. I wasn't even allowed to have a bath, like nothing like that. And I'll tell you, I had this moment where the curtain was separated between this girl next to me because you can hear everything. She was in her early 20s. She was there with her mom, and she was having a miscarriage, and she was quite far along. I think she was 6 months or something like that, as far as my memory um, tells. And
Mhm.
it was so humbling in that moment to know that I was having my experience, but here there was this young girl having her experience, and my heart just like broke open for her. And there's no privacy, and they were short staffed on nurses, so they couldn't even move her, of all people, to like a labor and delivery private room. It was just wild. And then, um, so basically, what reenacted my trauma was a gynecologist came in who was not even like my GP, my general practitioner. She was not there. She had interns. And it's funny, my memory makes it feel like she walked in with like 8 people around her. I think maybe there was 3, maybe 4 tops. That was still a lot of people to have around
Mhm.
you in a really vulnerable situation. And
Absolutely.
I remember the next thing I know, like I felt this excruciating pain that I'd never felt before. Like I didn't even cry, but tears were coming out of my eyes. And I remember looking at my ex at the time, and he just had this like profound look of like, what the F is happening? And all it felt like was she took her fist and shoved it up me so far, and I had an audience to boot. Okay,
Mhm.
so it was like, and after she was done, she looked at me, she's like, "I was trying to help you. I was trying to stretch your cervix." And all I felt was traumatized, like re-traumatized all over
Absolutely.
again. Yeah, and from that moment on, I finally got into a labor and delivery ward like over 24 hours later. And then my son got put on, well, I got put on the drip, and this time his heart rate dropped and it was not coming back up. So I knew I was going to be going in for an emergency C-section. And I just had it was just trauma. Like I had trauma with my epidural and then that. And it was just a whole, yeah, experience to the point where
Mhm.
I just wanted to get out of the hospital as fast as I could. So I learned some tricks that you can tell the doctors after you have a C-section, because there's certain things that they look for before they let you go. And yeah, I might have done a little bit of lying just so I could get out of there and get home and be in a
Mhm.
safe place. So
Mhm. Yeah, that sounds like a very horrendous experience for you. Absolutely. And I don't believe that childbirth should feel that way in general. Like, I know myself, my experience wasn't that great either, but like, that is, yeah, the way that women are treated, even in like, yeah, the hospitals giving birth and stuff. Like,
yeah.
it's meant to be this beautiful experience, right? Bringing your child into the world and everything. And it just, unfortunately, you hear so many like horrible experiences, like worse than better, I guess. And but thankfully we have so many different alternatives now for women, and we have so many more choices as women as well. And I think that that is like a step in the right direction. um so you were with your ex-husband
Yeah.
when you were obviously birthed your son. And so how long ago did you get divorced?
It's been over, it's almost 12 years. I think it's going to be 12 years. It feels like another lifetime ago that I always have to like go back and look on a
I know what
timeline.
you mean. You're like, I was a completely different person back then.
Yeah, I was.
So do you mind sharing a little bit about your situation and how your divorce process went and everything?
Yeah, it was fairly amicable. We did mediation. I think it was very interesting, and I'm very mindful when I share this story because I understand like we all have our own personal journeys, right? And
Mhm.
I was so blessed, just to share that little story that I shared with you. Even though it was painful while it was happening, it was the thing that life gave me to catapult into my spiritual awakening. So I found energy medicine less than a year later after my son was born. And that was a saving grace for me because I was so immersed in learning and becoming so enthusiastic about all of my perception shifts and my belief systems and my identity that I was focused on that more than I was focused on my marriage falling apart. And it just was. The way I like to share it is, you know how some fathers just, it changes them when they have a kid? Well,
Mhm.
it changed my ex too, but it pushed him away. It
Mhm.
brought up, I believe, all his childhood trauma, and he didn't or wasn't in a space and capacity to face it at the time. And so he went towards addictions. And
Right.
so while he was doing that, I was self discovering and it was a saving grace because I wasn't a wife that like checked his phone and was worried where he was. I mean, obviously I had concerns, but I just knew everything was going to work itself out, and he wasn't around. I was basically a solo mom from the time my son
Mhm.
was born. And eventually he came out with his addictions. One of them I had no clue. Like I had no clue about, and I was shocked and stunned, and I was ready to support him in his recovery. And I think what had happened is we just grew apart so much, and there was so much toxicity already there prior. It was really, really tough. And with him relapsing a few times, it just became a mutual decision that it wasn't going to work. And it worked out for both of us because he ended up becoming a better man and a better father. And he ended up, doing his recovery and is still recovered today. So,
Mhm. Well,
yeah.
I'm happy to hear that it ended up being a positive experience in the long term, right? Because that all the stories don't necessarily end that way, right? And that you were able to have an actual experience given the journey and everything.
Yeah.
Um, and it's so true though. Like, I'm a firm believer of like a reason and a season, right? We come together for these reasons, right? And for obviously like the birth of your son pushed you both in completely different directions, but for like the betterment of both of you in the long run, right? Which is like a beautiful thing and a beautiful story for sure. And so like your son, how was he through like the whole process? Because it was so amicable. I can't even talk right now. um like
Yeah,
how was that with him?
yeah, I love reflecting on that too. Listen, even though it was, we still had to move through some really crappy parts, you know?
Oh, absolutely.
It's never easy going from being married and loving somebody to knowing that you're separating and yeah, doing life differently. So there was lots of ugly moments, like to the point where just for my own sanity, I had to block him on Facebook and things like that. But that was for my own sanity.
Yeah.
And I think my son was so young, but I still remember the day his dad left and he ran out to the street running down the road crying after him. That was a hard moment. And then it showed up in other ways when he was young. Like he had maybe it was funny, maybe it was about a week. That was it, where he wanted a mohawk and he was kind of expressing, I think, his anger and his confusion of why this happened in the first place. But once he got through these little levels of what I would think, when his analytical mind started coming into play and he was trying to like match that with his emotions and his dad not being in his life the way he was anymore, um he's absolutely been fantastic. And his dad doesn't even live here anymore. He moved to Saskatoon, which is not too far, but we've had conversations every so often where I ask him how he's doing, I ask him how his heart is, and he's like, Mom, it was just so long ago. Like, I've just accepted it. Like, you just
Yeah.
move on with your life. And he's been like my biggest teacher when it comes to certain things like that. Because sometimes I think I hang on longer than him. And he's just been such a cool young man to see, witness how he handles his emotions and meets himself with just like so much groundedness. It really has been cool to watch.
Mhm. Our kids are amazing lessons for us, like, and teachers. Like, I'm a firm believer that our kids come into our lives to teach us certain lessons for sure. And yeah, that's like just a very beautiful way to put all of it and everything too. So
Yeah,
love that.
absolutely. And
Mhm.
God with his dad. And I get that he always will, and that's important. And mind you, it wasn't my preferred way of what it would look like as co-parenting. It's
Yeah.
funny because I'm going to share a little story with you. I was just recently watching in 2019. I manifested being at the Dolby Theater. I don't know if you know where that is. That's Hollywood, California. That's where the
Okay.
Oscars are held. And ever
Okay.
since I was a little girl, I wanted to be an actress. So going there was like a dream come true. But I went there for sort of like a transformational retreat. And I ended up manifesting being on stage and having a breakthrough in front of 3,000 people. And I was just rewatching this actually recently. And one of the things that came up was around my ex, and I was having conflict with him. And while I was watching it, I was so fascinated by this version of me that almost wanted to change him and control him so that I could paint this perfect image of what co-parenting looks like for our son. And my breakthrough was learning how to like completely let that go and just take responsibility for me being a conscious co-parent and not him, and being okay with whatever happened. And so I find that fascinating because yes, we want sometimes what we want, but we have no control over other people, and we can only do and take responsibility for what we can do. And so I had to let go of a lot of resentment around that, because I would
Mhm.
have preferred that he stayed in Regina and been in his son's life way more. At
Mhm.
the same time, it just is what it is, and life happens. And I'm sure this is part of my son's journey too, that he asked for coming into this lifetime so he could learn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not like, there might not be a relationship in the future. Like you never know, right? As everybody grows and changes and all that kind of stuff. But I kind of love like when you were talking about looking back at your aha moment that you had kind of thing, but like how we really do become different versions of ourselves along the journey of like being a mother and also going through the journey of like parting from our partner and what that all looks like. Like we really are different versions of ourselves all the way through, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think it's really important, at least for me, I've consciously process things before they happen. So like back in January, I had a big cry and I'm grieving this amazing, beautiful, wonderful relationship and the mom I've got to be to my son because I know everything's changing now, right? And
Yeah.
so to give myself grace and compassion and tenderness to experience those emotions and allow them to clear from my field is so incredible important, but it's also a beautiful part of the journey. And I
Mm.
think I don't know if you agree with me, but as a solo parent, I think I am way more sensitive to those moments because he has been like the light of my world. I poured everything that I have into this kid, and I know now it's like getting to that point where it's time for his wings to spread and him to fly and him to go create his own life. And I truthfully feel like I've been going through another dark night of the soul and a little bit of an identity shift
Mm-hmm.
around being a mom and what this next chapter of my life is going to look like. And I don't think there's anything shameful about that. I think it's important to talk about.
Absolutely. And I love how you shared that because I can totally relate to you right now, too. Like at the end of grade 11, I was crying already about it being grade 12 and like the last
Yeah.
year of school ever, right? Like those are all things that you grieve and how your life is going to change. And sometimes it's scary because it's like, what does that even look like as a parent now? Right? Like your role in your children's lives changes, right? But the way you show up in the world changes as well, right? And all of the time and attention you spent on your kids, that changes. And so it's like, what does this all look like now? Like what is going to happen, right? And it is exactly like you said, it's a grieving process. And like I can totally relate to the whole like dark night of the soul thing where it's like cuz you're just shedding this like the layers of yourself, the person that you were, the mom that you were, right?
Yep.
And I think that's like, yeah, it is beautiful. And I think it's something that we need to discuss more, um, and to just embrace the journey of it, right? That it's okay to feel
Yeah.
this way, right?
Yeah.
Entering in this empty nest phase of our lives.
I love to think about it too. And I've loved like catapulting myself into the unknown, but sometimes because I'm still human, like there is so much unknown in front of me, and I don't think I've experienced this much unknown in front of me consciously before. So I'm very, very um I'm just sensitive to it. So I'm like, wow, there's so much that I don't know. And there's two things that can happen with that. One, your ego goes, holy shit, like what's going to happen? But at the same time, it's such an exciting, pivotal moment in our lives because we actually get to like consciously choose and create what happens next and what we want to experience in life. And I've kind of felt in some ways like a teenager leaving high school all over again with like, oh, there's so many options of things that I could go explore and do that I haven't yet. And yeah, I think both sides of the coin exist. And it's just such an important, like you said, a really good conversation to have because I think there probably are a lot of mothers out there who are scared to allow themselves to feel the emotions that are coming up and just want to suppress them and put on a face like everything's okay. But I think when we give ourselves permission to feel, we actually create this void. You called it the empty nester. I mean, emptiness is really just void space. And we get to intentionally choose or call in or ask for what we want to fill that space.
Mhm. Absolutely. Like the void space. It's just like this empty space of opportunity to allow new things to enter. Right. And I can remember when my kids were little, I was like, oh my God, like I'm going to be so young still when my kids graduate that I'll be able to do whatever I want with my life. Like I can remember saying that. And I think the past 6 months, I've been like, oh my God, the time is here. What am I going to do with my life? Like, it's almost like this panic that I'm like, I need to figure it out now. Like,
Right.
what am I gonna do? Right. But exciting, right? Like you said, exciting in itself, like to discover this new version of you that you've never been before. And when you can look at it from that different perspective, it is like, yeah, it's just beautiful in its own, like the whole journey of life, I think. When you look back, it's just like this beautiful unfolding of even more of who you are along the way. And I
Mm,
think that's like, it's, well, and like you said, you're like shedding a whole identity. We've identified as being this like solo mom for so long that it's
yeah.
become your identity. And so it's like, now what? Right? Who am I without this identity? And I think that in itself is very scary, not just for solo moms, but moms in general, right? There's a lot of moms who, after their kids leave, they're like, now what am I going to do with my life, right? And so this is really about that discovery process of being able to do whatever you want now. And I think people are more scared of the freedom of choice
Right.
right, than they are about like just being like, this is what you're going to do, right? And change is scary as well. Like people see change as very scary because it's that unknown. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I love that you said, "Oh my gosh, I have freedom of choice." It was funny, something that we all want is actually freedom, but then when we're given it, it's kind of like,
it's
oh,
scary. You're like, what do I do with this now? Like,
yeah, yeah, because
yeah.
we're so attuned to the familiar, right? And we get comfortable in the familiar, and so when all that's stripped away, it's like, oh no.
I know, because like when you've been living like this one way, like for myself personally, it's been like a solid 15 years, right? And yourself too, like you're pretty close behind that. And so it's like, now what are we doing? How is this looking? How is this going to work? And I guess every day I just wake up and I'm like, okay, what am I doing today? And I just take like one day at a time. I actually had this discussion with a young girl on the weekend who I met, who's a solo mom, and she was like just overwhelmed with everything. And I said to her, I'm like, you know what? You look up the top of the mountain and it is very overwhelming because you're like, how in the world am I going to get up there? But I said, do you know what you do? You just take one step at a time and eventually you look up and it's a little bit closer. And really, that's all we can do is just take that one step at a time, every day, every day, every day.
Yeah, I agree with
Yeah.
you. Yeah, that helps with regulation in our nervous systems and stuff. And then something, once you're there, I think a game that I like to play too is being on top of the mountain and looking back down. And what would that feel like? And what would that version
Yeah.
of me doing right now and starting to take
Mhm.
action from that place?
Mhm.
But I'm not always in that state. It's like when I'm regulated, I'm good. I can be there. But I think both are true, right? Because we can go anywhere in our imagination and that really impacts our decisions and how we feel.
Mhm. I love that you brought that up because there are times when I was so conflicted with like, should I do this? Is this a good idea? And I literally would just be like, okay, my future self, like what would she choose? Like what would she choose? Like, is she there? Is she doing this thing? Is she taking this action? And like, that's kind of how
Mm.
I decided to go to like a conference last year or whatever. It was like, okay, would my future self want to be there? Absolutely. And I was like, and I'm not going without my girls. So we definitely made it a family trip and it was like incredible. And so like, yeah, visualization is very, very powerful. Like feeling the emotion of what it feels like to have what you're wanting in general or longing for or creating or whatever, like that feeling when you can hold on to that, as like
Mhm.
it just creates amazing things in your life for sure.
Yeah, one of my favorite. Well, I call him my mentor, even though he's not alive. But you would totally get that. I know you would get that. I'm like my mental Neville Goddard. I've been
Mm-hmm.
studying his stuff for
Yes.
some time now, and I think all mystical teachers kind of intertwine. But I love what he says about if you were already the person you desired to be, if you were already the person you desired to be, like how would that feel? What would you be doing in a day? How would you be thinking? How would you be acting? And even it could just be like the smallest action that you take. and it will just move mountains and cause like
Absolutely.
the whole universe to like rearrange itself, which often looks like chaos in the beginning,
Uh-huh.
reorder, right? And then all these bridges of incidents start to form to bring you to exactly that experience, that collapsing of like your past, present, and future into the now, which is, we could go down a rabbit hole there, but
It is a rabbit hole, isn't it? But I know what you mean. And like that shift and that transformation and that change often feels like chaos, right? And you had talked about like the nervous system, right? And really, when you can balance and maintain your nervous system through all of that is very, very powerful. And that's why I tell people all the time, like your power is in the present moment.
yeah.
Right. I just had an incident recently where it was like absolute utter chaos being caused in our lives. And I was like, the way I was able to maintain my presence and my peace and my certainty within myself through the whole process and not be wrapped up in all of it and come out on the other side. Like when I looked back at the past, I was like, I'm a very different woman now than I was even like a year and a half ago, right? And that was all from like working on my nervous system and all the work and everything that I've done on myself. And I think that in itself is beautiful to be able to, like you said, look back and be like, oh yeah, I have definitely done the work and I have definitely changed. So
Yeah,
mhm,
that's an important reminder. I think a lot of us have a tendency to forget how far we've come truly.
mhm,
Yeah.
or not even give ourselves enough credit,
Yeah, 100%,
right?
especially women. I'm just going to say it. We're the hardest on ourselves. We set such high expectations, which
Mhm.
I don't think is a bad thing, but we tend to not take the time to celebrate ourselves and like the small wins along the way. Cause yeah, we've done some
Or
incredible.
just making it through. Like that's the other thing too. When I look back now, like at the past 20 years, my oldest is 20, right? And I'm like, we made it through. Like when you're in the midst of it and you're like, oh my God, when is this going to end? And how am I ever going to get through this and everything else? And all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, and it's ending. And you actually just like, there's nothing you would give anything to just be able to go back in time now and do it all over again, right? Yeah. Yeah, it's so funny. Like it's so funny.
And
Just
tell yourself in all those moments you were freaking out, everything is going to be okay.
yes, everything will be okay. Actually, it's funny when I was like when I birthed my oldest daughter and I was struggling with nursing her and I was like, "No, she has to be a breastfed baby. We are going to be like I am nursing her, right?" And this was in the hospital and I'm tired and she's tired and nobody's eating and nobody's sleeping and whatever else, right?
Yeah.
And the nurse said to me, she was like, "When she graduates from college, it's not going to matter if she was a breastfed baby or not." And I was like, this is probably true, but in this moment, she will be like, I am nursing, right? But it's so
Yeah.
true. Like, we get so worked up about those things, right? In the moment, plus because you're like exhausted after everything and giving birth and whatnot. But it's like, yeah, in the long run, probably
Yeah.
didn't matter.
That's
I
really good
prob-
advice she gave you.
right? And in that moment, I was probably a little stubborn and like, no, it actually does matter. Oh yeah, it was so
The
funny.
professional instinct to want to like give the absolute best to our kids, right? And so
Mhm. Yeah.
if our image of that is like, shaken in any way, it really shows us where we need to let go of control, and that's tough sometimes. We're so protective.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
I'm kind of want to circle around and bring like your worthiness aspect back into this and how like as moms like I think as single moms too we tend to like be striving nonstop to be the best version of ourselves, or not just ourselves, but the best version for our kids as possible. And I think that tends to be like lead to sometimes over giving, self-sacrificing, and as well as like trying to play the role of both parents sometimes as well, right?
Like,
Because we want to like fill in that that space that we think they're not getting because this, that, and the other, right? But as a home with two parents, because I know I've been thinking about that lately too. But um, the fact that like the whole worthiness thing and like when you were talking, I was like, it's not just me, it's like me too, if that makes sense. Are you following me?
Yeah, I'm following
Like it's
you.
not me before everybody else, it's like me as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally get it. I was like, check, 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 check as you were
Yeah,
talking.
like that I'm worthy and deserving of like whatever it is, like my time, my attention, my care, my nurturing, my love, my, and that's really what it's about, right? When we're working through all these things and into the dark night of the soul, it's like a reparenting of yourself, right? And that requires a lot of like, care and kindness and compassion and everything that you give to your children, and like that you also deserve that too.
Yeah, and I think it's sometimes really easy to, when we have an object or a subject like our child of attention where we can like put our love into something outside of us,
Hmm.
we almost get addicted to thinking that we need that there in order to feel love. And I think part of my journey, I wrote on my wall, I can't even remember how many years ago when Bryce was maybe two, I'm committed to love. And I knew in that moment what that meant, like intellectually, that I would have to remove everything that wasn't love. And it's not a pretty journey. Like it's been everything. But what that reminds me of is there were times where you get so fixated on showing your love to something outside of you that in order to like take that and turn it around on you is sometimes the most uncomfortable thing to do because we were not taught to do that. At
Hmm.
least I wasn't as a kid. And the times that I've sat with myself, and I just think meditation has been a huge thing in my life. I don't think I would be where I am without it. It made me sit with everything that was happening in here. And I'm talking about just sitting in silence, not having a guided meditation. I use those sometimes, but just sitting with my own thoughts, with the sensations in my body. And what I discovered once you get past all the noise, and that means all the familiar, all the known parts of you that tell stories and tries to pull your energy in certain directions, on the other side of that, in my experience, all there is love. And the more I
Yeah.
gave myself permission to do that, the more love I experienced just between me and this moment. And I've had so many experiences like that that I know that what we are is love. Now, do I forget that? All the time. All the time. But I think it's really important, and it is something that can help people, especially when you're going through like these transitions of your kid turning a teenager or leaving home, or I'm thinking of like the next thing that might happen where he gets married, that's going to be another layer on top of that.
Right. Hmm.
But to realize that, I mean, he's had a girlfriend for, oh, I'll be very transparent. He's had a girlfriend for the last 2 to 3 months. And there was a moment where I literally felt like I was being replaced.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not ashamed to say that out loud because that's truly how I felt. I
Yeah.
know it wasn't what was actually happening, but I
Hmm.
gave myself permission to feel that. And then I moved through it because I realized all that's happening is now all the attention that my son used to give to me, and I was like the only woman in his life. Now he's taking all that love that we built up between us and he's giving it to her. And to me, that is actually a beautiful thing and a testament to our relationship and how we work together in this co partnership of mother son.
Hmm. And how you taught him, what you taught him about love, right? And to
Yeah,
just expand that. And I love
yeah,
how you said, like, about love in general. Like, I always say that, like, the only real emotion is love, and any other ones are just a lack of it. And so, what do is you just pour in more love, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It takes an
That's so
open heart to
beautiful.
do that for sure.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think lots of people, when you were said about meditating, because I know I listen, lots of people are like, well, my mind wanders. And I'm like, they think you're just supposed to sit there and think about nothing, but that's not actually it. It's about like addressing what comes to mind and why it is and why it's coming up. And like, yes, your mind's going to wander. Exactly. That's the point. Where is your mind wandering to? Because it's showing you what you need to address in this moment, right? I think if you're thinking about like, oh, I need to do dishes and I need to do laundry, that's a different situation, right? But it's like when you're really sitting with yourself and being like, why do, like you said, why do I feel this way right now? Right. Well, I feel like I'm going to be replaced, but is that true? No, you're always going to be his mom, right? Like he's always going to love you and he's always going to need you in one way or another. Right. But we tend like that happens when you feel like you're going to like lose something and things are changing and transitioning and transforming. And it's just creating more though, which is fabulous in itself.
Yeah, I love what you said. And I also think that um, the more you sit with yourself, the more you cater less to the thoughts that try to pull your attention. And then what you
Yeah.
discover is just spaciousness. And there is
Mhm.
nothingness in that spaciousness, but it's not through force. It's literally through being with yourself, which I think is one of the most loving things that we can do, which we often don't do because we're so distracted by our phones and by
Mhm.
food and by whatever, and we're constantly like your body goes where your thoughts go,
Yeah.
and that's how we create habits and these patterns of thinking, and then we wonder why our lives are the way they are. But
Hmm.
yeah, it's just very, very interesting. And if I wouldn't have given myself permission to observe that thought and feel that thought and get to the root of it, I would have never had or found the gift in it. I think there's a gift in everything.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Like whether we can see it in that moment or not,
Yeah.
right? Like sometimes we'll look back and be like, oh, yeah, okay. Now I see what that was trying to show me or what that was trying to teach me or whatever else. But absolutely. So, is there anything else you would like to share with everybody before we wrap it up today?
um I think just wherever you are is where you need to be to fulfill all of your desires. I think the biggest struggle that we have in life is fighting where we are and resisting what is. And if we can just learn to like open our hearts and surrender to the moment, there's then so much generosity and availability and potential and possibility in that moment. So I just want everybody to know that wherever you are is perfect, even if it doesn't feel perfect.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was beautiful. Thank you so much. And thank you for being here today and being real and vulnerable and all the things with us and sharing all your beautiful words of wisdom. I very much so appreciate it. So thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
you're a
you.
really good podcast host, and I'm really excited
Oh,
for
thank
you.
you. I appreciate that.
Your energy is wonderful, and I mean, I've been on the other side of being a podcast host, so
Mhm.
I can generally say that about you. So thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Aw. Thank you so much. And maybe we'll have you on again sometime, talk about some other beautiful things. Alrighty.
Yeah, thank you
Okay,
so
thank
much.
you. And everybody enjoy the rest of your day. Love.